And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, ladies and gentlemen. But tonight, I'm going to hang it over here to the slasher Prince.
I know about Prince.
And you said, I don't know about King. So, which
I'm
better do you want to follow?
This is
fine. You're the princess and the pea. So what? Anyway.
Oh. Weird. Anyway, so getting on track or whatever was going on here. So I'm Dustin. I'm hosting our special episode tonight. So we're continuing our slasher month theme with maybe the most popular slasher ever. I'm going to start a fight with that. Nightmare on Elm St. So the original Wes Craven movie that if you haven't heard of, I would like to know how.
Okay.
So if you somehow haven't seen Nightmare on Elm St, we're going to spoil Nightmare on Elm St. But yeah, it's one of those movies. It's a little hard to summarize because it's like, who hasn't seen that? But so essentially, spectral maniac Freddy Krueger is killing people in their dreams, and it's up to Nancy and her friends to figure out how to stop him. In Wes Craven's career-defining. So to prepare for this, I read as much of Tommy Hudson's Never Sleep Again, Nightmare on Elm St legacy documentary book as I could. And it's kind of hard to summarize just like how important and how much went into this movie. So it gave me a little bit of pause there. But I mean, this is such a huge seminal classic in horror. It's fun to be able to finally like talk about it and get our perspectives on it. So I guess we're going to go into our traditional format here. So for me, I'm going to give a little bit of background on, you can't talk about Nightmare on Elm St, of course, without Freddy. And so the first time I saw Freddy in anything was, I'd heard of the name, Freddy Krueger. Like I'd seen pictures of him here and there. The first movie I actually saw Freddy in was Freddy versus Jason.
Oh my God, you're such a baby.
Oh, really? I think I might have seen Jason for the first time in that movie too. It was just on Sci-Fi one day.
What?
It's kind of hard to remember. I ever saw Friday the 13th Part 8 or Freddy versus Jason, like as my first introduction to the character.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to grow up with this stuff like everybody else did.
Yes.
My first time seeing, I think I saw the Nightmare on Elm St remake before I saw this original Nightmare on Elm St.
Blasphemy.
I know,
Oh my
right?
God, really? I knew Katie. What the hell, dude?
But yeah, I finally saw the original Nightmare on Elm St in, I think, 2012 or so, with my big introduction to horror thing that I was doing when I got my first apartment.
As a Southern woman, I got the vapors behind that.
And I can't say it necessarily blew me away, like in the way it did a lot of people. But I mean, obviously, like it was great and I enjoyed it. It was just kind of like I sat there and I watched it and it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. Whereas by contrast, going back to the Never Sleep Again book, so I was reading the prologue where it's like, as a 10-year-old boy, I begged my dad to let me go see A Nightmare on Elm St in theaters. And I sat there and cried and covered my eyes. And it's like, wow, Freddy was scary?
Oh my God, Freddy was my introduction to horror. But, I'll talk about that when it's my turn.
Yeah, me too.
Well, how about we have it be your turn?
Okay, that works for me. Hey, folks, Katie Cadaver here, back for the first time in a while. When was my last episode? It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't know. I've been busy doing all my Katie Cadaver stuff, so what are you gonna do? But anyways, I did not get to watch the movie in preparation for this episode because I'm super busy all the damn time. But I think I've seen it enough times that I probably can contribute something of substance about it. But like I was saying, Freddy was my first introduction to horror, and I was just thinking about it, trying to remember how old I was, and I'm guessing I had to be at least 10, if not younger. And my cousins had cable and movie channels and all that kind of stuff, and my older cousin was always looking for things to watch that were inappropriate, and he landed on horror movies a lot of the time. And I remember, and I don't know if it was the original Nightmare on Elm Street that I saw for the first time or if it was one of the sequels, but I just remember the concept of Freddy being super terrifying to me. I was a kid who had a fair amount of nightmares and, kind of these, the fear of anything sort of scary or supernatural. Like I was a believer as a kid big time. So a wild imagination and then a character like Freddy was just enough to really scare the crap out of me and actually scared me away from horror movies in general. Probably, if I'm being honest, into my adulthood. I think I spent many years just avoiding it because, Freddy kind of ruined it for me. And I think the original Nightmare on Elm Street really sets us up for just that character of Freddy would become. I mean, he's not quite the Freddy we know today. He wasn't that in the first movie, but I just know that as a kid, the concept of it, of a killer that would get me in my dreams, like that was the ultimate scare. So I've been, I would say, a fan of the franchise as an adult, but as a kid, I wouldn't go near it. It scares the living crap out of me. I have a little anecdotal story too. When I was, I don't know, a single digit child, having a sleepover at my cousin's, we fell asleep with the TV on. And I don't know if it was the Nightmare on Elm Street like TV show or something. There was some TV show with Freddy that had come on in the middle of the night. And
Freddy's Nightmares.
Freddy's Nightmares. It had come on in the middle of the night, and I woke up to that, obviously scared out of my gourd. So yeah, I mean, I that was my introduction to horror and what scared me away from horror for many, many, many years. So I owe a lot to Freddy there.
By contrast with all this talk of Freddy being so terrifying, like I almost bought Freddy Krueger underwear today at Hot Topic.
Oh, he's been merchandised so much now and is a caricature, really, at this point. He's really changed. But we can obviously talk about that more when we talk about Freddy as a character.
He's not only in your dreams, he's in your wet
cash your commission checks there, Robert Englund.
Right.
All right, so who's ready?
I guess I'll go next. I guess me. Well,
Hey,
I'm sorry, I'm Kim. I've never come on, but I decided to come on tonight. I'm Seth Sim's wife, actually. Nightmare on Elm Street actually is my favorite horror movie of all time. Mainly because I was like 5 when I first saw the movie. This is gonna sound crazy. It was actually not long after it came out in the theaters. So I'm showing my age there a little bit. My brothers are much older than I am. And very often when we lived in Louisiana, my dad was military. My mom worked in a sawmill when we were in Louisiana. And my brothers were my babysitters. So we watched whatever they watched. And actually, this movie holds the distinction of being one of the last horror movies my dad videotaped off with HBO for me before he died. And I still have that VHS to this day. It was Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2. It was a double feature on HBO. And I don't know, unlike other horror movies, Freddy never really scared me the way that other things did. I mean, it did, but it was just interesting, the idea that your nightmares could kill you. And actually, after my dad died, the movie that gave me the most reoccurring nightmares was not Nightmare on Elm Street. It was Phantasm, a reoccurring nightmare that I still have to this day at 37 years old. But Freddy is, I like the original Freddy of the, the menacing Freddy, not the slapsticky, one-liner Freddy. Actually, Brandon and I were talking about that the other night of how much he has changed from what he was
Bring
in the
me
first
the bourbon.
Exactly. Oh wait, can we cuss on this?
Probably.
Okay. I said,
We're here to spoil.
Fucking
I
That's
hope so,
me.
because we fucking do all the time.
Okay, I was making sure, you never know. But I was like, yeah, monetized, yeah, exactly.
Come get us.
It was like, I was like, I'll be on in a second, hon. It's like, I said, where's the fucking bourbon? And I was telling you last night, we were trying to watch the third movie, and the mom of Patricia Arquette's character, you see her again in the fourth movie, and I remember my oldest brother was like, when we saw the fourth movie, and you see the mom come up, he goes, I thought that bitch died in the last because let's be real, she was kind of a bitch. But
Well, she does like pretty much directly kill her daughter in part 4, doesn't she?
yeah, and damn near does it in part 3. Exactly. Kind of a heartless mom, but yeah, I mean, I can think of several like childhood memories as far as horror movies are concerned, and they're always Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mothers are just so loving.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, my mom and I actually, after my dad died, we moved up to Virginia. That was one of the things my mom and I bonded over, was our shared love of horror movies. Like I remember like coming home from school after music lessons, getting my bath together, getting my, my little footy pajamas on, and we're watching scary movies. And sometimes it was Nightmare on Elm Street because it was something that we could both watch together that she liked and I liked. It's our thing. So yeah, to this day, it is my favorite horror movie of all time. I can't fully explain why, it just is.
Well, myself, I was see before Robert Englund was Freddy. I watched him on a miniseries called V, and there he was very comical. So when he came out on Nightmare on Elm Street, and of course it came out the year that I was born. Okay, but I came into the series on Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And
I think that one came out the year I was born.
and I was really into Dokken at the time. I was and a lot of 80s hair band stuff. So I had to go back to see number one, and I believe the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff just kept on coming on TNT for guys who want to watch movies. I remember the commercial well, and Freddy, the original Freddy was definitely very dark for me. I mean, it's not that he was scary, but I agree. In time, he came to have those one-liners, and for some reason, I love a little bit of both. I love the dark side of him, and I like the light side of him because I've seen Robert Englund play those comedical characters before, just not so much in dark one-liners, So, to me, not only was it about things could happen in your dreams, but in the first one, she was bringing shit back from her dreams, and that's what scared me the most.
Well, they do that in all of them, don't they?
Well, yeah, over time, yeah, but that's the thing that was freaky, So,
yeah.
Go ahead. What about you?
Oh, yeah, I had actually had an odd introduction to it. I was introduced to it in the past, I will admit, when I was fairly young, but I was introduced to the series through the fourth movie, which I saw pieces of over and over and over again. It's probably the one I've watched the most out of the series, next to the first one. And I hated horror as a child, but there was just this concept of, oh, well, you just keep watching enough of it, you'll be desensitized, which I really wasn't as a child. I think it actually made me hate horror more as a small kid. And I was really against horror by the time I got to finally see the first Nightmare on Elm Street film when I was in grad school at the time.
Damn.
And I thought to myself, wow, this is so different from what I'm used to. I'm used to like all the over-the-top dream sequences, and Freddy being the, as it's been said, the snappy one-liner of the series. That was what I was used to when I would see this stuff. But very different movie. Definitely when I started watching it for the first time, and of course I've watched it many times since then. I've always found it fascinating, the whole concept of being able to invade a person's dreams. Part of my interest in study has always been the study of the mind, and that particular movie I thought was very interesting, especially on a lot of the notes that it hits with psychology, dream diaries, or dream interpretation even. So I was quite interested in the film, and I've watched it many times since. Except for the third one, because apparently I don't remember watching the third one.
That's that's the one that most people say is the best one, Dream Warriors.
Well,
is it?
Yeah, it's got a lot going on.
A lot of people
pretty
say
fun.
the best one is 3, but believe it or not, 4 is the one that hit that made money at the box office, and what made Nightmare on Elm Street skyrocket.
I thought that would have been the so 4 had like the biggest gross, or what are you
It
mean?
had the biggest gross of all of the films, including the new
Including the first one.
Yep.
Wow.
Hmm.
No, I just remember, coming to it from like Freddy versus Jason. It's like, wow, he's not telling us many jokes.
I think I read the first one made its money back right away, though, so it was profitable.
Well, they got pretty lucky on that too, because I've listened to like the documentaries and like the special features and all the information that's available on this, save for this book, which I heroically got almost halfway through, and it's not a small book, in like a day and a half. Like this was just like absolute hell to make, and like they basically threw everything they had into it, and if they didn't make any, and if it wasn't successful, basically all of them would have gone broke.
Right.
Anyway,
yeah.
Your turn, Jake.
So yeah, I had a very unusual route to this one as well. As I may have mentioned before on here, well, kind of like Brandon, I wasn't into horror growing up, but also I had kind of a sheltered. Things like this would not have passed muster with what I was allowed to even think about watching. And I was well aware of the title of the film. I was well aware of Freddy as a concept. He's one of those characters who's such a part of pop culture that you know about him, and I know I saw bits and pieces of one of the films. I couldn't tell you which one, at least once as a child, but I cannot remember how old I was. And again, I don't remember which film it was. So as far as I know, I didn't actually have a serious exposure. Somewhat ironically, though, I actually have a very clear. It's funny the way dreams work. Sometimes they can actually become memories when they're vivid enough. And I actually have a very vivid memory of a nightmare from when I was a child that has so much in common with this film. It's freaky, given that I'd never seen the film. I don't even know where that one came from, but it's just I just have this vivid memory of this dude with long knife-like fingers scraping at me, in my dream. It's weird. I don't know where it came from,
And
but
I
Yes.
have two dreams myself
Yeah.
that I remember when I was two nightmares. So I know where
Yeah.
you're coming from.
Right. But at any rate, I don't know. Brandon might have even been the one who showed me this film. I can't remember when I first saw it. It's been a minute at this point, but it was after I graduated college. I had not seen the film until I was an adult. And at this point, I'm pretty sure today was my first viewing, my third viewing of the first movie. I attempted to watch the second movie, but I'm so tired today. It was a failed attempt, I think. But the weird thing, though, the way the films are structured, it almost made for a very interesting viewing experience because I don't really know how much was the movie and how much was the dream. So I'll have to give that one another go eventually. And then I rewatched it another time with the commentary track. So I guess I've seen it 4 times. It is a good film, and I was impressed by it the first time I saw it. I was impressed. One thing that impressed me very deeply the first time was something we alluded to in Psycho, in our discussion for Psycho, and we might as well get it out of the way here. I think you've already done the spoiler alert. This is one of those films that sets you up to follow a protagonist and then kills them off. It's kind of interesting when that happens.
Yeah.
But this may have been one of the first films I saw that happen. This one and Psycho may be the first ones I really saw that happen. So, yeah. So generally positive first reaction. I do own pretty much all the films in this series, including the remake. I'll get to them eventually. See then how I think of those.
I personally like the remake because I think it had a lot of good ideas. It just executed almost all of them very badly.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Many people thought so.
That's about as generous as most people will be. I think that's the most generous opinion you'll ever hear about the remake, honestly. I seem to be the only person who thinks it's okay.
Good times.
But anyway, moving on to the plot. So, how should we tackle this, guys?
Well, apparently there has been a man that was burned by the entire town.
Well, the more important place to start is that Freddy is painted as a bit of a child molester, actually, in the first film, which they get away from a little bit later on. But
child murderer, not child molester.
Child murder, but they hint at they actually had to take out the molester part of it.
Yeah, the satanic panic daycare case was going on.
Yeah, so they had to pull back. But that was originally the direction they were going with Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a bad man who did horrible things and got off on a technicality. So the parents of the kids he murdered or whatever get together and basically take the law into their own hands, corner him in a boiler room, and attempt to burn him to death.
Let's be real here. Those parents went full on Texas justice style. That's some small town shit right there.
It's sort of funny because it's like if you could talk to Freddy like in a safe way, you'd be like, "Well, come on, man. I mean, you kind of kind of had it coming,
Yeah, except
Well-
here's the thing: it's the kind of town that will kill you, but then they won't speak about it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that Freddy comes back to terrorize these kids as they're teenagers, and it's up to them to kind of figure out how to get rid of him. And he plays on their fears, much like a Pennywise and It would do. It's kind of like their fear of him is what gives him power. So I think it's a neat concept, and actually, if I remember correctly, Wes Craven actually based it on some realistic stories in the news, like some Asian guys that were like dying in their sleep from various things, that were like terrified of sleeping.
It was like a trauma thing, like with like
several
war
young people
survivors.
it was several young people. They were, they would die in their sleep, and they couldn't figure out what's wrong. They thought maybe they're having heart attacks. They would look at these kids and say they're perfectly healthy. They're not dying of poison or suicide or anything like that. It's just that they would just pass away. And then it would start digging into it, and they were basically scared to death.
Yes.
It was like sudden sleep death disorder thing.
Yeah.
It had a technical clinical term attached to it, but I cannot remember it for the life of me.
And it's something that does still happen to this day to people, that you can literally be scared to death.
Right. Well, like in this instance, they, I guess to say it a little more clearly and how it relates to the movie, these kids, he said he found 3 cases where they all reported that they were scared to go to sleep, that if they went to sleep, they would die. And then when they finally did go to sleep, they died. That was pretty much, And he took that, and I guess I might be seen as slightly exploitive that he took that and turned it into a movie, but it's kind of interesting what he came up with here.
I think it's a great concept, and if we look at the other slashers of the time, really pretty unique.
Well, yeah. And actually, I was going to make a quick little. I had not really made the Pennywise connection, but that's a pretty good little point there. Except that, whereas with Pennywise, they had to go looking for trouble. Here, Freddy comes to you.
Actually, I can't remember where this interview is from, but Robert Englund, the guy who played Freddy in the original series and just definitively is Freddy. So his idea for a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie was that there would be multiple Freddys, and Freddy would be like a shapeshifter, like Pennywise. And his Freddy would be like the true Freddy that comes out like at the end. So that was a cool idea that really kind of married the two concepts.
Yes, Freddy Krueger, green versus red. Oh, that'd be kind of scary, actually.
Freddy Krueger.
I was gonna ask you guys, what do you think of that idea of, like, if you have kids, or your hypothetical children? I don't think anybody else has kids besides me, but would you take the law into your own hands if the murder of your child got off on a technicality? Like, I would too. I think it's totally believable, but I wondered what you all thought of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it can be, and it is also in the movie. Some of them dealt with it in different ways. I mean, I'm pretty sure Marge Thompson was not a complete lush her whole life. And I think she
clearly
probably
affected by what's going on there.
At the same time,
Nancy's mom drinks a lot because she's like traumatized.
Going through divorce.
Right.
But at the same time, these are people who are likely the pillars of their community. Nancy's dad is, the police chief or whatever. And it's like, they do this whole thing in the remake where the people who did it were the rich people in town, and we're like, oh, hell no, son. You're not getting away with this shit. And
Well, the
If I thought I could get away with it, if I thought that Brandon and I could get away with it, and okay, you killed our kid or touched our kid or whatever, now son, you need to fucking die like right the fuck now. Yes, you are. Yeah, you're asking would I do it? Hell the fuck yeah! Not even a hesitation. Just touching my kid, you're fucking dying. But if you kill my kid, not only are you fucking dying, I'm gonna torture you first.
wow,
Burn you alive. Make sure you're
got
alive.
dark.
before I
Wow.
set you on
Oh
fire.
no, not burning you alive, son. I got some medieval shit for you.
Yeah,
And
one
then
thing,
someone,
one thing I
and then
liked about
someone will be making a horror film based on the return of.
Well, one thing I liked about the remake that
Iron Maiden
that was
shit.
that was an interesting idea was they played with the idea like what if Freddy actually had been innocent, and it's proven like nope, he totally did it and worse. But for a while, it's like wait a minute, maybe they did get the wrong guy, and that's why he's returned as the ghost. But that was another of the cool concepts in the remake that they just totally shit the bed on, for lack of a better term. It's like, oh, that's a good idea.
If that Freddy would have been Robert Englund, that would have been a much more successful movie.
We'll save the fighting about the remake for later.
We could even do that one in a later discussion. I'm
I
frankly amazed y'all got this far without doing this one.
Yeah, it was episode what, 100 something?
Right. So basically with the plot, you've got, like I said, the film initially starts with this girl, Tina, and you see her dream. And then you're introduced to her jock boyfriend, Rod, and you've got Nancy and Glenn, who are their friends. And Nancy seems to be a little more level-headed than, Tina. And Glenn, the introduction to the cinematic world of Johnny Depp, which is fairly odd and notable in and of itself.
He is very
And
young.
then Tina dies. And Rod is framed for it because he was there.
Well, Tina's been seeing Freddy in her dreams and telling her friends, it's like, hey, I'm gonna have these weird dreams with this guy. He chases me, and they're like, "Oh, you've been having those too? Huh, weird." And then the next night,
what a quinky dink!
Well, Nancy says that the two guys won't admit that they've been having these
they're
dreams.
too hard for that. They're like, "Nah, son, no."
Yeah. Why are you so worried about dream?
I know, right? Well, I can kind of understand that. Like, it's a dream, and the girls are like, "Oh my god, I've been having this dream about a guy with knives," and the guys are like, "Dude, seriously, it's a dream. We all saw the same movie or something like that. Calm the fuck down." I can see why the guys are like, "It's just a dream. Get over it." So I'm gonna side with the guys on this one. Sorry, I'm just him.
I do think they all show a bit of a moment, at least. Each one, I think, shows a moment where when they realize it's the same person they're dreaming about, they have that sort of...
why are we having the same dream?
Yes. That's kind of weird.
There is sort of a thing I remember from the book. Charlie Sheen was being considered for Johnny Depp's role at one point, and he basically was really not into it. He was like, I read the script and I didn't understand it. And it's like, you got this guy with a hat and his fingers go like clicky clack or whatever. Like, this is stupid. He said in a drug-filled haze. I added that last part.
He probably did. Yeah. And also apparently he wanted more money to do it. But
supposedly, but that may not have been the case. That's the part of the story that I kind of left off at.
My favorite little anecdote with that was that Depp apparently had not even considered acting at this point, and he was roommates with Nicolas Cage. And Cage auditioned for the role, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come along?"
Yeah, that's my favorite story.
Yeah,
my favorite stories from Hollywood.
Yeah,
Craven had his daughter and her friend there. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to do the do you want to do the female read for this while we interview these guys? It's like, oh, okay. And like they saw Johnny
You're
Depp.
dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Johnny Depp versus Nicolas Cage. Johnny Depp at that age was much cuter.
Could you imagine though the movie how different it would have been with Nick Cage in it?
I remember the first film it being the one that all the girls were all agog because, oh my God, it's Johnny Depp! Oh, because it was shortly after that he was in that detective series. What was it called?
21
Jump Street.
Yeah, and actually a couple of the people in the cast showed up on that, but then everyone in the 80s showed up on that show at one point or another. But
21 Jump Street was a series?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. It was
long before it was anything else. It was a series.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, so Tina dies in her sleep, like in one of the movies. This movie has a lot of really great, memorable set pieces for its kills. And the first one is Tina's, where she's lifted off the bed and thrown around the room, like as like slashes from Freddy's signature weapon like appear on her body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we'll talk about how they shot that scene when we get to special effects, won't we?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, Rod, it's kind of funny, like Rod, like the screams wake Rod up and he just kind of stands there in the corner like, what the hell is going on? Because she's like flying around the room, like smashing into stuff. Like she hits him at one point and like knocks his ass out.
That was fun.
He's like, what's going on? Ah! And then he runs away. And so of course the cops think he did it and he gets arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Nancy's trying to figure out, exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna blast through the plot because there is so much to talk about in this.
Right.
So anyway, Nancy has a dream about Freddy getting Rod in jail. So they go to try to save him, but Freddy's already gotten to Rod. So Nancy's doing research on what is going on in the background here.
Somebody's getting a Facebook call. Messenger.
Someone is calling me.
So just mute it while you're on the call with the person.
You know how to do that, right, Dave?
No.
Just mute your mic.
Huh?
Just
Mute your mic, Dave.
Yeah, you go. Okay. Back to where we were.
Sorry, I lost my place in a fit of rage.
You're talking about Rod getting killed in jail.
Yes, so Rod dies in jail. Like, Freddy is able to kill him. Freddy makes it look like Rod hung himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of have a bit of a lull while Nancy, she learns Freddy's name and says it to her parents. It's like, well, this is what he was wearing, and his name was Fred Krueger, and they have like this, wait a minute, like look of realization on them. And after a point, she finds out Freddy's backstory from her mother. Like her mother has Freddy's. Mm-hmm. So if you somehow don't know, Freddy's trademark weapon is a glove with it's a glove with like knives for knife fingers.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like a claw kind of thing. It's kind of hard to describe, but there's no way in hell you haven't seen it somewhere at some point in your life. Like
even as a child.
Pretty iconic.
Yeah, I thought it was actually kind of cool that the thing wasn't just some mythical weapon that he came up with in the dream world, or that was a part of his persona there. That was actually something that he used to kill people with, which I thought was pretty cool.
With a flashback of him making
it. Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty involved for a serial killer.
That thing was only 4 claws, correct?
Yeah, no, it doesn't have one on the thumb. I think the one from New Nightmare has one on the thumb, but
which is why that's garbage. Go on.
3.
I mean, I personally really like the weapon just because of my connection with like animals and stuff.
Okay.
Like it had like a really special appeal to me, and I always wanted to close my little. Anyway,
allegedly, the original glove from the first movie went quote unquote missing, and may or may not be in the possession of Robert England's old agent or
I
manager.
saw that. Right.
I say may
Well,
or may not
actually-
be because they're not really sure.
That was a
Right.
persistent problem. Like a lot of the gloves got stolen.
Right.
Yep.
I think at some point they figured out, oh yeah, we need to put these in like a safe at the end of every day. But
Yeah, fucking thing. Yeah, exactly.
it seems like it took a while for them to like, figure that out though. Wasn't it like part 5 or some bullshit?
I like how
Anyway,
they apparently lent one of them to Sam Raimi for a film. But
oh yeah, they had
Yeah.
it. The glove appears in the shed in Evil
Right.
Dead 2.
right.
Anyway, so Nancy's mom reveals Freddy Krueger's backstory and shows it's like she has his physical glove,
Mhm.
like the one that's not in Dream World.
Well-
And so during one of her Freddy encounters, Nancy finds out that she's able to, if she wakes up while she's holding
Right.
something, she wakes up, she can bring the object like into the waking world. Like she manages to grab Freddy's hat this way. And so she hatches a plan to bring Freddy into the waking world. And so she's going to go to sleep, find him, grab him, and then have Glenn wake her up. Well, Glenn falls asleep. Like,
An idiot.
Glenn in this movie, because Glenn is just like hapless and unhelpful.
Just like his parents.
It's like, okay, Nancy, I'll keep watch over you. Like immediately, like
Yeah.
and so he falls asleep and dies in another spectacular set piece, which everybody will remember.
Mhm.
He gets. We'll talk about it in more detail, like in effects. But so he falls asleep, and he's like, "Oh, everything's fine." And then he gets like sucked down into his bed, and then just like this geyser of blood comes out of the hole in the bed. And
You
Freddy,
talk about an iconic death.
well, Freddy was a downloadable character in Mortal Kombat 9, and that was one of his fatalities. And it was called "Freddy Sent Ya," which is one of my favorite phrases of all time. So that's
I'm
a
waiting
line
for that for Freddy to come back in Mortal Kombat 10 or 11.
that would be so great. Well, Ed Boon wants to do a horror-themed fighting game. Like he just needs, the licensing must be a nightmare on that.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, God,
Ah,
no.
nightmare!
Just like with Friday 13th.
But
man.
actually, the mouse
it's
owns
notable.
quite a few of them.
It's probably worth mentioning that the dream where Nancy makes the discovery of bringing things back is her mother forces her to go to a dream clinic, and
Yeah.
she's actually on monitors with a doctor who I didn't think seemed all that competent, really, but they're just sitting there watching her, and then she starts freaking out, and he's like, "It's not supposed to do this," like all these numbers off the charts and everything. and then she wakes up, and she's got a couple cuts on her arm, and she's holding the hat, and her mother's like kind of freaked out. And she's like, "What? Where did you get that?" And then she starts pretending, oh, she found it somewhere, like trying to play it off. But it's like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely a running theme in this movie that the adults are generally like clueless and
right.
almost kind of helping Freddy.
Well,
Because
that's a
And then I don't think they're clueless. I mean,
They're in
that
denial.
is exactly, Jacob.
yeah.
I mean, mind you, on one side, they're that typical horror movie trope of like they're clueless and stuff, but in the reality, all the adults in the situation, they fucking know. Because remember,
Yeah.
they killed Freddy.
it.
well,
It's their fault.
So they
Yeah.
believe. So I think Nancy's mom, from day one, she believes her daughter.
Mhm.
And then when she sees the hat, especially when she's like, "Holy shit!" And then you hear her on the phone with the dad, like, "I'm holding it in my goddamn hand." The dad might be in denial. The mom, with her
Yeah.
drunk ass, she is not in denial.
I think it's
And
right
they-
after that she actually did the bars on the walls. Actually,
She
on the
did
windows.
exactly.
Yeah.
She
'Cause
got
she
fucking
knew
freaked
something
out.
was messed up. Yeah.
Because that'll help against the specter. Yes, it really will. But and actually in the commentary they mentioned that and I agree with this. They make the point that like Lieutenant Thompson's not really a bad cop, he's just a bad. They say he's not a bad cop; he's a bad dad.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good way of putting it. But he did have a couple of his subordinates who are not so good. One of my favorite moments, like bits of humor in the film, was they were like, he's like, go ahead and get the keys. You know, they're trying to see Rod. Go ahead and get the keys. And I'm like, where'd I put the keys? It's like, you don't want a cop in the police station that not have any idea where the keys to the cells are. That's not good. But it gave me a chuckle. But anyway.
Yeah, the parents
Yeah.
are pretty much to blame for the
Right.
predicament that their children are in, and it's an interesting dynamic in comparison to other slashers from that time period, because like if you think about, say, like Halloween or whatever, there's really no parent involvement much, and then you think of like Friday the 13th. Again, really, I mean, there's adults, but there's really no parents. And so when we do finally get a slasher where we do have some parent involvement, they're almost part of the problem.
I almost kind of wish that there was more backstory to the parents in this original first film, because the first parent that we see is the sheriff, and he comes in. Guns blazing, thinking that it's murder, even though 4 kids have already died. So the same way. So to me, he didn't show a moment of realization that, oh my God, it was fucking Freddy. Until his wife was fucking dead. So
when was the book written? Was that written before this?
I want to say Jesus. Late 70s, early 80s.
I think that's
because
right.
I was thinking to myself, if that was in there, because there are a lot of similarities of almost the apathy that some of the parents present when you look at both of those concepts, and they're very similar in their concepts.
It was written in 1986.
Yep.
Okay, so never mind. Maybe Stephen King took it from this, because if you think about it, a lot of the parents in it, at least it's a lot less of incompetence and more of just a blind acceptance. That, it's going to happen. These kids are going to die. We can't do much about it. We just have to let it happen. And we can make more kids later. And, and it will be good for another 20 years.
Well,
wow, a lot happened while my mic wasn't working, apparently.
What if they did Pennywise in place of Freddy? What kind of movie would that have been?
Oh,
Stephen King's It.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, what else? Anyway, so left all alone, it's up to Nancy to figure out how to defeat Freddy, which she seemingly does. Although the ending is kind of unclear.
Well, and there was some contention between producer Bob Shea and Wes Craven about how they wanted to end the film, because Bob Shea wanted to leave it open for sequels, and Craven wasn't really interested in going that direction. So there are several different endings that were actually shot for that.
Yeah, there are 3 on the Blu-ray.
And of course, we don't forget that Macaulay Culkin must have watched the movie for Home Alone to get the ideas when he was doing that.
She sets like a bunch of like random traps for Freddy. And
within 10 minutes, she said that should have been 10 minutes. Remember that? Like, it was midnight when she called her dad, or she talked to her dad, like, come break the door down in 20 minutes. And then she did all the traps. She ran that whole montage. And then she set her alarm clock.
She has like tripwire minds. Like, she's like reading a book early in the movie, like anti-personnel devices. What is
this
that?
This bitch managed to pry open several shotgun shells and do all this shit in 10 minutes. And then managed to fall asleep again, within 10 minutes, start dreaming. This is where you got to suspend belief a little bit.
Well, at this point, she would have been so sleep deprived, falling asleep in 10 minutes wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah, but start dreaming to that point.
Yeah, that's
Come
true.
on, Jacob. Come on.
One thing I want to point out that I really appreciate is whenever in the Nightmare series, Freddy is, with the exception of Freddy versus Jason, whenever Freddy is pulled into the real world, like he's kind of, I don't necessarily want to say klutz, but awkward. It's like, yeah, I'm in the real world now. Ah, shit, that hurt. Like, you can just, like, beat on him. He's just like a dude.
He's like Ghostface.
Well,
He's like Ghostface and
They're like
Scream.
throwing doors and shit at him. It's like a scary movie. Like, he's trying to run up the stairs and she's just, like, throwing, like, vases and pianos and shit.
I wonder if there's an interposition of the Home Alone setup scene and Freddy tripping through the house, going through and triggering all those traps.
In that voice. So I think one of my favorite things, if not my favorite thing about Freddy, is just like the voice that Robert Englund uses for him. It goes, but it's almost like an exaggeration of itself. He just sounds like this all the time.
Okay, now y'all just got me doing all this like imagining of recasting. First, you got me thinking, what if they had done Robert Englund as Pennywise in the new It series? Now I'm seeing, what if he had played one of the Wet Bandits? I mean, this is just like.
No, thank you.
They actually had like a book of booby traps that they were getting some of these things out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like booby traps and anti-personnel devices.
Well, there's that part where Glenn looks at her like, why are you reading that? What are you reading?
It's like, where did you get this?
And then according to her in the commentary, she had like a whole little speech, but they must have cut it from the film. It was like, she's talking about how much she liked that. And then they show it and she's like, oh, well, they must have cut it.
Well, anyway, so I guess moving on to character. So aside from Nancy and Freddy, there's not a whole lot of depth to the other characters, at least in my opinion. This is a fairly tight cast movie.
Right.
Well, and I think we do have to give a nod to the depth from the parents. Again, like I said before, they're pretty instrumental in the way that things play out here, and I like that dynamic. So I think, and you know, we're seeing like different levels of these kids and their disenfranchisement. You know, like parents that are not involved or separated or barely involved, and like sort of how that affects their kids. It's a dynamic that we're not used to seeing in horror movies at this point in time. So it's kind of revolutionary.
Or most movies at that time, really, because they didn't want to discuss that sort of thing, even back then.
Actually, that reminds me of something of a character thing for Nancy's mom. Somebody on Twitter wanted me to mention that I think at one point in the backstory, one of Freddy's victims was supposed to be like Nancy's like younger brother, and so that's why Nancy's parents were so directly involved in like the killing of Freddy.
Well, and actually I saw that too, that apparently several of these kids used to have siblings that they don't know they used to have.
They don't remember.
Yes, because apparently Freddy took a lot of the kids
them
out. Yeah. But yeah, you're talking about different levels of involvement. Yeah, you do see Tina's mom very early on. You see her not kind of rough-looking boyfriend, and then they say later, "Oh, she was off in Vegas with her boyfriend." And it's like, yeah, okay, that's some good parenting there. And
Tina's mom kind of a bitch, so
yeah. And Nancy's mom really too. Like, I know. I mean, we're gonna get to effects pretty soon here. So the last effect of the movie is this really bad-looking dummy of the actress who plays Nancy's mom gets sucked through a window, and there are some close-up scenes where if the actress wasn't speaking, I would have thought it was the dummy. She looks very stiff in the face.
Yeah.
Sorry, whoever you are.
I didn't think she was. At first, I thought, oh man, she's just terrible. But then I realized she was trying to play someone who is plastered, and that definitely is part of it. But she does have sort of an off-kilter quality throughout her performance. That's for sure.
She'd even a Stepford wife quality at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has anything thing to do with Nancy, but my fiance was sitting beside me talking about Nancy. She said this. She had really thick hips and butt, didn't she?
Not really.
What? Okay.
That was the comment she made. So.
Okay.
Tiny.
Okay.
We're talking about
Actually,
Heather
was it
liking
me?
him?
Apparently,
I
That
guess
she was thick?
No, not even close to that.
No.
No.
well, apparently,
Actually, I do admit that the first teenager killed did not look like much of a teenager.
In the
That's
face.
80s movies
In the
for you.
face.
No.
Well,
Actually,
I mean,
Amanda
look
Liss
at
was, I think
look
she
at Johnny
was
Depp, though.
23.
yeah, I think Johnny Depp was
But
20
look
in
at
this,
Johnny
wasn't
Depp, because he had the baby face. I mean, they all look fairly appropriate, but she definitely did not.
Well, she
Well,
had
that was-
wrinkles. And we were talking about that last night. Like, babe, she had freaking wrinkles.
Well, that was
This
like
ain't the
Depp was able
70s
to.
with Jamie Lee Curtis looking like she was 30 playing the part.
Actually,
Well, she actually that age.
I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is the part where Nancy looks in the mirror and she's like, "Oh God, I look like I'm 20." And it's
Well,
like
she
first
actually
of-
was.
Well, yeah. Well, I think she was 19 when they filmed that, but she was 20 when the movie came out. But I just also think it's hilarious of like she's supposed to be like 15, and it's like, oh, it's this horrible, horrible thing to look like you're 20. You're so old at that point. I'm sitting there going, shut up.
So Robert
That'd be
Englund,
nice to do that.
Robert Englund talked about using that as kind of like the motivation for Freddy. Like Freddy like hates their youthfulness, and it's like when I first heard that like many years ago, it was kind of like, that's sort of fucked up. But now that like I'm 30-ish myself, it's like, you know what? Yeah, fuck those kids.
Well, and also he talks about like, sitting through the makeup process too, and like just having it be such a daunting thing, and like these kids are all just hanging out, being pampered and whatever, and so he just channeled like whatever jealousy or hatred he might have had about that topic into his Freddy character, which I think when you look at what he has to do as Freddy, like there has to be some method for an actor, to get into a character like that, such a character.
Exactly.
If you really want to read as being terrifying, like you really got to work at getting into character.
Just look at Johnny Depp in his like comfy chair and be like, you motherfucker.
Right? I recently was listening to an interview with Sid Haig where he talks about, getting into character and like tapping into all of the parts of him that, are reflected in the characters that he's played. And, he says there is a Captain Spaulding in there somewhere. He just has to find it and pull it out. And I imagine that's much the case for other, horror movie villains.
If anybody is familiar with the Venture Brothers, like that one villain, Monarch, there's a scene in one of the early seasons, like he's trying to like do something else, but he's like, but this just isn't me. And it's like, well, then just be you. And he just do what you do if it was, this other scenario. And he's just like, give me that gun. It's like, oh crap, he's letting it out. So I imagine it's kind of like that.
He was a good villain.
Damn.
I just got one random note talking about getting into character and all that kind of stuff. One thing that amuses me about the cast is that Rod, who's supposed to be like this real bad boy, and he's just this terrible influence, and everyone believes in a heartbeat that he killed this girl brutally just because he's a bad boy and all this kind of stuff.
He has a leather jacket. He must be tough.
Oh yeah, but the actor who played him, who apparently was credited as Nick Corey, but IMDb now has him listed as Stu Garcia. I don't know if he officially changed his name or
I
what
think
the
Super
story
C
is
was
there.
always his name.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back then Latino actors were not
Good point.
getting
Yeah.
the respect that they deserved,
Right.
and so he was advised by an agent or whatever not to
Okay.
use his real name.
And because of his looks, he was ethnically ambiguous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I just find it amusing that this guy who supposedly is this horrible bad influence or whatever is apparently now a minister.
In real life, yeah.
Yes.
And still very good looking. Don't get that wrong. He's still very good looking.
But yeah, talking of agents, I think it's Johnny Depp's agent. They said that played Tina's the boyfriend of Tina's mother. They said it was just some agent who wanted a line, and they're like, "Okay, you can have this."
Yeah, we
role."
need some guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need this scummy looking guy to be like, "Come back to bed, baby."
Who better than an
That's
agent?
the line too.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, I'm in the movie. Oh, man.
Imagine some of your grandkids. Hey kids, one time I was in Nightmare on Elm Street. As the creepy guy walking to a teenage girl's bedroom to pull her mom back. Oh,
Reminds me of this
gross.
really awful joke I heard a while ago where the punchline was I forget the actual joke, but the punchline was like, "Hey kid, want to buy some candy?" But I don't know.
All goes
Okay,
back to the
ew.
bourbon line.
So bad. So bad.
The bourbon. Oh, Jesus.
Anyway,
Yeah. As we get on our character digression here. Scummy agents and beans of all shapes.
Well,
Anyway,
if he wanted revenge,
I think
Johnny Depp goes to Vietnam afterwards.
yeah.
Would you like a balloon?
oh yeah, they were in he was in Platoon or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never seen Platoon.
It's a
So
good one.
well, I might have
been a while.
seen it. I think the thing I remember most about Platoon is it's like a throwaway gag in one of the Naked Gun movies. Or like they walk out of the movie theater like laughing their heads off, and the marquee says Platoon. Anyway, so I mean, we could spend easily like 3 hours on just Robert Englund's portrayal of Freddy alone, but I think we've kind of covered all of that throughout. So let's move on to like special effects.
Mhm.
So, which I think Katie knows more details of both Tina's death and Glenn's death. So I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Well, I don't know how much you guys know about how those scenes were filmed, but they had a rotating room that they
Yep.
used for
Yep.
those scenes, which, from what I understand, it went okay filming Tina's death scene, but which is an awesome scene, by the way, probably one of the more iconic death
Is this
scenes
the one
in
where she
the
was
history of
actually
horror.
going across the ceiling or something like that?
Yeah, she's being
Right.
dragged up the wall across the ceiling and everything, and then they shoot Glenn's death quite the same way at the end there, where he gets pulled into the mattress and then a geyser of blood comes spewing out. And actually, during the shooting of that scene, the amount of
Malfunction.
bloody
Is that
water
where
that they
TV
used
went down with him
actually-
and everything?
the amount of bloody water that they were using in that scene actually weighted the rotating room to basically shift on itself. So it went completely upside down and people were hanging on for dear life and there's bloody water going everywhere. But they did get the shot. So
Well, apparently
again,
That's
one of
what's
the more
important. They
iconic
got the shot.
scenes. Yes.
I think I read that also some of it went into where all the electronics were being kept. And,
Yeah, the lights and stuff.
yeah.
The one of the guys actually got electrocuted, not obviously to death or anything, but yeah, the lights were flickering and crazy, and yeah, that's what happens when water gets all over everything. It's a pretty good conduit.
Right. Right, but they wanted that because it gave more of a geyser effect. That was what I read, which it did. It gave it a pretty interesting effect.
So yeah, and I think those are the two. I think those are the best effects in the movie. I mean, there is a scene where Freddy comes after Tina's mom, and she turns into a skeleton and like dissolves into the bed. Like that was pretty cool, and it's like nothing else in the movie.
It's Nancy's mom, not Tina's mom.
Nancy's mom. Sorry.
Let's not forget those moments where they used actual what was it, the rubber of some sort for him to appear from not only the bed but from the wall, which those were cool effects.
Oh, like where they stretched the spandex across the wall and had him do the.
Oh, definitely wasn't
Freddy's trying to come out of the wall. That was pretty cool. I mean, this movie does have a lot of like really amazing, like iconic effects. It also has some effects that kind of don't quite hold up, at least to me. Because there are a few things here and there where there's one where like Freddy has his face pulled off and you can see like his skull underneath. Like that looks a little it's got some rough edges, let's just say. Because I was taking a close look at it on Blu-ray and it's like
Well, and I mean, Freddy's makeup in itself is a pretty iconic look. Like if we just look at the transformation that Robert Englund goes through to become Freddy, it's pretty intense. I'm not sure how many hours he spent in a chair getting the makeup done, but super super cool and iconic. His whole outfit is really awesome. And I think I heard too that the choice of the red and green sweater was purposeful, that because those two colors are so hard to look at next to each other, it was meant to be a real disturbing image.
Yeah, and now I can't not have them on every possible thing. I have a Freddy scarf. I have like 3 sweaters. I have a hat. Oh my god, I have so much Freddy stuff.
Well, you've got to actually.
You actually have the glove now.
I have 2 gloves. They're both NECA props. Trick or Treat Studios is doing like much more high quality, like sturdy props in the fall. They're going to be like $200 a piece, which is the price of like a really good custom. I mean, I might sell off my NECA prop gloves and get one of those, but they are pretty pricey. They should be amazing though. So Trick or Treat Studios is coming out with a Freddy makeup. Speaking of the Freddy makeup, it definitely gets better in other movies, because in this one, you could kind of, again, like it felt like it had rough edges. Did anybody else notice that? Like after having seen Freddy in other variations of that makeup over the years?
Well, I think it's just a matter of how it's changed over time. Like, you start out with a concept and it's like, yeah, this works or whatever. And I don't think anybody had plans of like, this was going to become a however many movie franchise or whatever.
Yeah.
Over time, technology, things get better, stuff gets more advanced, and I have no doubt that the makeup artists have changed throughout the course of the franchise.
Definitely.
So, that all plays into how the makeup changes, as well as, your person underneath facial structure changes a bit.
Well, Robert Englund's face is like so distinct that you can kind of always tell it's him under there. The thing that kind of stuck out to me was like Freddy is kind of gray in this one. Like, did anybody else catch that too?
Yeah, a little bit.
And I mean, again, it's all playing with the character to make it evolve. I do feel like if you compare it, really the comparison I think today is when you're looking at the practical effects versus the CG effects. I mean, a proper comparison, look at this movie as compared to the remake. In my opinion, I actually prefer many of the effects used in the original to the remake, which used a lot of CG.
They did a very bad job on his face. Like, his face in the remake is like the absolute worst. Like, I saw like the concept sculpt, and it's like, that's so much better. Why didn't you use that?
Well, to be fair, they were trying to go for what an actual burn victim looks like.
And they did a terrible job. He looks nothing like
Yeah.
a fucking burn victim. Like, did you try? Like, that's my thing. Like, I hate people who don't try, and it felt like they didn't try. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't
die.
go that far. I think they were modeling that makeup look off of an actual burn victim, and I've never been face to face with someone who's been burned over 75% of their body or anything like that. So I can't say for sure, but you know, as it went on, it did get better and more distinct. But also, I think originally the concept was kind of like pepperoni pizza based, you know.
I know that is part of. I don't know that is part of the creation of the makeup story, which I didn't get to. I didn't have time to revisit yet. Well, my main gripe with that was just like, oh, have him look like a real burn victim. It's like you're looking at burn victims who have healed from their burns. Freddy died from his burns. He
Which
doesn't
means
necessarily
that
look like that.
Imposing, fleshly looking thing.
There's like holes in his skin.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
But-
bone should definitely be protruding. Things like that. When you look at third-degree burns, I've
Well,
dealt with
in
people
the third
who've been in
film,
that situation.
Dark Knight. I mean, goddamn. They could have done that. They should have done that. I don't know why they didn't do that.
in the third film, he comes back as a skeleton. So it's
Oh yeah, like the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels get so crazy with just all the insane bullshit that happens. Like, oh my god, don't get me started. At least not yet. Anyway,
But you'd never be able to figure. You'd never be able to tell from the first movie where they were going to go with all the other ones. Especially if you get into like Dream Child being the most. I think Dream Child was got to be the most outrageous.
The second one.
Freddie
like,
Murphy.
whole-
That was the fifth one.
and the whole like his mother was a nun and son of 100 maniacs, or was it 1,000 maniacs? There were
It's,
multiple maniacs involved.
I mean, the second one went in just a totally different direction.
The John
and-
Waters film?
Yeah.
That's the joke. John Waters was somewhat involved a lot in most of the films that New Line distributed when they were starting out were John Waters films. Like they had a relationship with John Waters, and John Waters like introduced people to New Line that ended up working on this pretty intimately. Actually,
Still
that
very iconic, yeah.
I did have one other production note as far as effects and things. I've been trying to look it up and see if I can find independent confirmation, and I'm just not having any luck. But apparently, Wes Craven was told this scene where Freddy comes bursting through the mirror is supposedly the first use of a breakaway mirror in a movie, which is a pretty notable thing there. But like I said, I'm having trouble finding any information on that otherwise. But yeah.
okay.
So one effect that I think still worked fairly well was like in some of the earlier dream sequences to like intimidate his victims. Like Freddy will be like, "Hey, look," and he'll like show them how sharp like his claw is by like he cuts off a couple of his own fingers at one point.
Right.
Like, slices open his chest. Like those worked really well. Like I think those were also. I think I would call those like second tier effects behind like the big memorable ones. It's like, wow, those are really effective.
Well, I was telling Brandon the other night, the scene where he slices open his nipple, and it's like yellow green pus comes out. I was telling you, Brandon, like when I was a little kid, the first time I saw that movie, that scene, for the longest time, I would not eat over easy eggs. Because of that scene, because the eggs that we got when we were in Louisiana the yolks were not yellow, they were like a yellow green, and they reminded me of that scene. And I was like, you know what, I'll eat scrambled, I will eat anything, omelets, I will not eat over easy eggs. And so if it was like runny eggs, I wouldn't touch them. And the first time after that movie I saw it, I was like, it's that stuff coming out of Freddy's nipple. Nope.
Yet another reason not to eat that kind of egg.
I'm so happy I can't picture this right now. Oh my!
I ruined over easy eggs for all of y'all.
Well, I
Well, I
mean,
never cared for them anyway. But
eggs that aren't scrambled are just disgusting. So, moving on. Music. This movie had pretty great music. Really memorable main theme.
mhm.
Who knows more about the music?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not too much to say on the music other than Charles Bernstein, was that the composer?
That sounds about
I
right.
want to say
And
yes.
and it's a pretty cool score, like a lot slower than like a John Carpenter type of synth thing. We get a real like deliberate, slow moving reoccurring theme, which
Of course, we
think
got
kind of
a lot of sounds from that factory that Freddy came from.
Boiler room.
yeah
Boiler room,
yeah
intermixed with that.
I think I like the chase music the most.
Mhm.
Early on when he's coming after like Nancy and Tina. I
actually thought. Oh, sorry.
just can't figure out how to describe it. I don't know. This movie has great music.
I always thought that the sound mixing was good because they had a lot of, as Dave said, like a lot of the machinery, and you had to deal with a lot of different pieces. So I thought they really did a good job with that.
And you had like a lot of effects worked in there too, like just like the creaking of like the pipes in the boiler rooms, and just, like the sound of Freddy's claws just on shit.
Mhm.
Well, Bernstein also worked on Cujo, and he worked on a film called The Entity that I know well. So, and he's worked on a lot of. Invasion of the Bee Girls was one of his that he composed. Oh my God, that was from the 70s. So,
is this a Roger Corman movie?
This was
Invasion of the Bee Girls.
It was from that era.
Actually, sounds a hell of a lot like a Roger Corman movie.
It does a little.
Directed by Dennis Sanders in 1973. So. It was definitely from that era. Powerful cosmic forces turning Earth women into queen bees who killed men by wearing them out sexually.
I'm just gonna assume this is a Corman movie. It sounds like his particular flavor.
Death by Snoo Snoo. All right.
Well, I think the only musical thing I have to talk about is that Freddy lullaby that we hear at the end. The little girls jumping rope, which is like just such an iconic, integral part of the franchise. So I play a lot of the game Dead by Daylight, and Freddy's a downloadable character in there. And today he got a severe mechanical overhaul. Like he's a totally different character now, and he's amazing. And when you're chasing after like victims, like they hear the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you lullaby, and it's awesome. And also there's been some really cool like soundtrack releases for the entire franchise. So I think my favorite gimmick that they did was it was a multiple CD set. I think it had everything from the first Nightmare all the way through Freddy vs. Jason, and the box came with like a little Freddy sweater on it. It's like $90 or something, like because it's very rare now apparently, but I just thought that was worth noting. And then they also had a really nice vinyl set called the Box of Souls that is just ridiculously expensive. But anyway, so moving on to all our favorites. So I'm gonna just shoot out my favorite. So my favorite scenes, I think, are both of the chases of Tina and Nancy, where you first get like introduced to Freddy. Like Freddy's got Nancy like cornered in the boiler room and just like, come the Freddy. Like I enjoyed that. And whenever Freddy laughs, I think I like Freddy's laugh the most out of like all of his like weird character idiosyncrasies, because it sounds like really exaggerated and ridiculous, yet very menacing at the same time. So that's my favorite thing. So let's go next.
Well, I guess I'll say, like I said, I did love that line about, being 20. One of my favorite moments was actually a little thing. Partly it was my being an English major, and the fact that there was that classroom scene shortly after Tina's death where they're discussing Shakespeare in class and they're discussing Hamlet, and then they kind of switched gears, switched to Julius Caesar, and this dude stands up and starts reading a scene from Julius Caesar. And then you got Nancy in the back. You see her trying to nod off, and you don't really necessarily get an indication that she did fall asleep. But one of the first cues you get is a really great line. The kid up front has suddenly switched back to Hamlet, which I kind of like that because that's something the English majors will get, but maybe not everyone would.
I didn't get it.
But basically, he says I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself the king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. And it's like not only is that perfect to the movie, and it's a great quote of Shakespeare, but that's a real subtle cue that things are not quite what they were.
Not right. Yeah.
So I did like that. Yeah. Things are rotten in the state of Denmark. Yes.
The fact that you caught that means that whoever directed this film, which was Wes Craven, was very literate.
He was a professor. Like he had like a hardcore background.
Yeah, he was an academic guy for sure.
So like I said, I just thought that was kind of a fun one, and that might have been one of my favorite moments in there. Yeah.
I would have to say my favorite moment was when Nancy had woken up and saw Johnny Depp sitting over there, and she was like, "You asshole! You did the one thing I asked you to do, and you fell asleep."
And he's like, "What?"
Sounds like me, fussing at Septum Sin about locking the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I asked you to do: lock the goddamn front door.
Hey, I leave the door unlocked all the time, so I think it's more of a guy thing.
You shouldn't. I never.
Not me. I always lock the door.
Okay, Dustin, let's be real. You live in fucking Wisconsin. You live in the middle of fucking nowhere. We live like a few.
No,
I live in
Dustin,
I live like downtown.
Yeah, Dustin wants to make sure the door is locked. He lives on Mitchell Street. He lives right in the middle of the city. Milwaukee is not the middle of nowhere. There's no cornfields around here.
Yeah,
pays him to be paranoid. So,
well, it seems like about once a month, like I forget to lock it, like for like an hour, like after I get home, and I notice it, I'm like, panic attack, like I run over, and it's like, although then again, like I have enough like horror collectibles and like props at this point that it's like, I could grab like a sharp object from pretty much any point in the apartment.
Hey, you can literally hide behind the wall of chainsaws.
Well, we have,
There's only one chainsaw.
we have very sharp chef knives that we got as a wedding present, and like when I'm home alone and Brandon's at work and I'm like, I'll hear gunshots. I'm like, babe, talk to the cop that's sitting next to you. Ask him if he's heard anything's going on in our neighborhood. I will freak out. Like one time there was like cops, like the county cops, the city cops, and the state troopers in our front yard. You got several cars pulled over, people in handcuffs, and I'm like texting Brandon, like, okay, ask the cop with you what is going on. And he's like, he hasn't heard anything. I'm like, there are people in our front yard shining flashlights, and the goddamn cats are screaming. One is screaming like, help! And the cop, every time the fucking cat would start yelling, one of the cops would start shining light into our back towards the house.
They're looking for the body of Brandon's last patient.
Well, my apartment overlooks this alley, and there was one time I was studying for a final, and I heard a bunch of noise out there late at night, and I was like, whatever. And then I saw a bunch of lights, and I look outside, and it's like a cop car, and I was like, huh. And then a little while later, there's more lights. I look outside, there's an ambulance, and more cop cars. I crane my neck out a little bit, and the cops are like putting up like the crime scene tape and covering up something with a sheet. And then there are like cop cars there till like 4 a.m. and it's like, oh.
Well, I guess it depends on where you live.
Someone got killed.
If you're at a place where absolutely no one knocks on your door or even tries to come in or anything like that, and no one even realizes you exist anymore, then to me it's
Lock
okay.
your doors, Jesus.
To me,
I feel like we're really off topic here.
Anyway,
what if you live in the Texas Chainsaw House and you want people to come in?
Exactly. So I can motherfucking murder you.
Anyway, whose favorite?
Why is he breaking them all wrong?
Well, watch out for the devil trap over there. You'll have fun with it.
Okay, well, my favorite scene, to get back on topic, is the one where early on where Johnny Depp is trying to use the sound effect tape to try and convince his parent that he's someplace else, and it goes off, and he's like, looks like they took care of the gunshots.
Yeah,
it was just
fine. Gotta call the cops. He's staying the night at Tina's with Nancy and Ron. And he's told his mom that he's staying with his cousin, like, who lives by the airport, and it's like, I got this. And he plays like a tape recording of like an airplane taking off. It's like, oh yeah, Mom, it's real loud out here. But there's like a bunch of other sound effects on there too. So there's like explosions and like gunfire, and he's like,
he got from Rod from the movie Tina's Boyfriend. Like, of course, Rod would give him like a shitty tape. Like, oh yeah, totally, dude. It's like, I'll cover you for tonight. Of course, Rod's an asshole.
that was a good scene. I'm happy you reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Okay, who didn't go for favorites? Did it?
I didn't. I don't really know if I have a clear favorite, but I guess I'll just mention those two scenes that were shot in the rotating room, just because they're very standout for me. Probably when I think of that movie, those are the scenes that come to mind. So I would say those are my favorites.
Yeah, and I think the casual person who's maybe not necessarily into horror but has seen this, like, I think that's probably what they remember too. Like,
yeah,
if you ask somebody on the street, it's like, hey, you saw Nightmare on Elm Street, right? What do you remember? Oh man, that thing with the bed. So anyway,
geez, I don't know what my favorite is. Probably the Tina scene, actually, because that's the scene that's most iconic. With actually two Tina scenes. One where she's being killed and she's being dragged across the ceiling, of course, and then the other one where she's in the body bag and Nancy's hallucinating and she's in the school hallway. And Nancy, that scene. The kitten just ran away from me when I did that. So those two scenes are probably my two favorites.
That was a favorite around the body bag. A lot of people love that.
Yeah.
One thing I tend to notice that is always in every single movie is there are always kids singing that nursery rhyme.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Yeah. That's the whole point. Is it's Freddy. It's coming for you. 9, 10, he's back again. That sort of thing.
Well, like I was saying earlier with Dead by Daylight, so when the killer is close to you, like you hear like a heartbeat sound. With Freddy, you hear the lullaby instead, like as he gets closer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah. And you hear music from Michael Myers. Anyway, so oh man, additional items of note. We could talk about stuff for like 4 or 5 more hours, but I think we should limit it to just one more thing from everybody if they wish to contribute that. So, anybody got any final thoughts?
I feel like we didn't talk about too much about Robert Englund and why his portrayal of Freddy is so iconic, and I wondered if anybody had anything to say on that.
It's because he had fun. I mean, let's be real here. Like, you could tell Robert Englund is having fun with this role. I mean, and Brandon and I were talking about this the other night, like the tongue thing where he's like, oh, that creeped me out. Like, he's doing a tongue wagging thing. Like, I don't know anyone who could do that tongue thing so well.
Was it in this first one that his arms went really fucking long?
Yeah, and that actually was a stuntman that did that. It was a stuntman with fishing rods. It wasn't even Robert Englund that did that. So that was again another practical effect that they did for the film to save money. That once again, the fucking remake, of course, they always ruin that sort of thing with special effects and CGI.
Like all of the dream kills were just like, gotcha, stab, and it's like, that's it. Come on, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I will always love about the original Nightmare on Elm Street is that they were on a shoestring budget, and you can't tell it because all the effects and the kills and everything was very practical.
And
exactly when he's coming through the wall over Nancy when she's asleep in Tina's house, it was through a piece of like latex or whatever. And then again when he's coming up through the mattress after her mom has died, it's again through a piece of latex. He's just pushing through it. You
saw him just kind of step through the jail cell,
Yeah, exactly. And you can sit there and I think that was probably done with like stop motion or maybe some sort of masking or shit like that. But like when you look at even the third movie with Freddy coming out of TV, it's prime time, bitch. Again, that was using
supposedly he ad-libbed that, and it's just like you nailed it. I mean, there's so much that could be said about like how Englund approached Freddy and like created Freddy. It's kind of hard to like summarize just because there's so much out there.
He built an image.
Freddy is, I think, probably about at least 80% like Robert Englund's contribution.
Exactly. I mean, in later years, we were talking about this the other night, like how much I hated, and before I started thinking about it, I hated how Freddy became extremely slapsticky. And you do have to question how much of that was Robert Englund, how much of that was the studio or his agents and other people influencing him and stuff.
And I'm gonna finish the book this week, and then I'll know more on it. Like I've seen the documentary that the book is connected with. Like I've seen the Never Sleep Again documentary. I just hadn't read the book before, and the book has deeper information, so I'm looking forward to learning more about that. Like, I really like Robert Englund. Just everything about him is fascinating, and hopefully I can make it to Flashback Weekend.
Shoot, we watched one with him. I was gonna say we watched one with him earlier. We watched Behind the Mask, an entirely different role.
Like Robert Englund has had like such an amazing career. Pretty much because of this. Like this is what Robert Englund is famous for.
Well, it's the impact the film made on a lot of things. We joke about it, but I am sure that there were influences, be it with Stephen King's It, or even because that was 1986, as it was said, or even something as innocuous as Home Alone. I'm sure because these types of things, they stick in your mind. And a lot of people will start imitating even without realizing it. And that is the beauty of some of those things. Wes Craven, it is sad that he has passed because there's so many iconic things that he has produced. With this one and Scream being the two that come to mind just right off the top of my head. But there are others.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I personally liked Cursed, but I'm largely alone from what I understand.
Last House on the Left?
I personally like People Under the Stairs.
I mean, that's pretty awesome,
oh my God,
too.
Yes.
But
anyway,
Shocker.
Well, Shocker was awesome too. Anyway, so who else has any extra things to add on?
I'm out of here actually.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to you guys later, okay?
All right.
All right.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Like him. Because it's like for me, I just wanted to touch again on just like how alien the concept of Freddy being like so terrifying to a lot of people like still kind of is to me. Like reading that firsthand account, if it's like, oh, I was so scared when I saw it in the theater, it's like I don't get like I feel like at this point in like pop culture, like you kind of miss out on a lot of that
Well,
reaction to Freddy because it's like I mean, like I said, I went to Hot Topic today. Like I'm seeing like cutesy like pops of Freddy, and I'm seeing him on like underwear and like lanyards and stuff, and it's it feel like it does really kind of dilute like what the impact of that must have been like.
No, I mean he was one of the universal monsters of the '80s, really. I mean, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, even though he was '70s, but still, Chucky. These were the universal monsters of the modern age.
Yeah, and Leatherface,
So,
of course, too.
yep.
So I mean, I wonder what would have been like with like a super scary Freddy like that I hadn't been like exposed to. Like I wonder if the perception of the character would be different. I mean, I know there was a girl I knew in high school who was like really obsessed with Freddy. Like Freddy seems to have a lot of female fans. And I sent her an email to be like, hey, can I ask you about that? And I didn't get a reply, but I didn't really expect one. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting psychology at play here, I think, too.
well, and I saw on IMDb, and I don't know when or if this will come about, but I saw that there is a possible reboot of the A Nightmare on Elm Street in the sometime future. I don't know when, but there is a spot for it. So.
Try again.
Well, I mean, I think the licenses with Warner Brothers and Warner is not great in my opinion. I mean,
it's done good work.
Blumhouse could get their hands on it. Like Blumhouse would like kick butt, but I think Blumhouse is Universal.
That's the thing. Warner can do good, but the problem with Warner is they see the dollar signs and they tend to grab for it. I think when they legit want to sit down and do something, they can create some amazing stuff. Or usually, like any studio, when they learn to leave the directors and writers alone.
Right.
That seems to be, that's like with Fox or Sony or any of them. I mean, the mouse has figured out how to do this. And if the mouse can figure out how to lay off, surely these other studios can.
Well, I think my main gripe with Warner is that most of their physical releases are fairly lazily done. Like they use the same menu format for everything, and it's just like the most ugly dog shit menu from like 2005 that they literally have not changed or updated in any way. Like it looks terrible. Like, ugh. At least the features they put on stuff is somewhat okay. Like the Nightmare on Elm Street series, it's on like a Blu-ray set, and at least each title like has like at least some featurettes and a commentary. But I feel like they could do a lot more with the Nightmare like license, with the Nightmare franchise than they really did. Like I think my dream scenario would be like have them license, like Shout Factory was able to put out like a Halloween box set through some sort of like big licensing deal with everybody who owned like all the different Halloweens. And I think if Warner would just kind of play ball with them, like I think they could do like a really incredible like Nightmare on Elm Street set.
Oh, I'd love to see that with Freddy's Dead, the series tacked on at the end of it.
Oh my god,
I think that would be
a monumental set.
That badly needs a release. I mean, from what everyone has told me, Freddy's Nightmares is a horrible show that's like barely watchable.
Yeah.
But the only way to see it now is like these really bad like VHS rips available online, and the picture quality on those is so poor that you can barely make out shapes and dark scenes. Like I've tried to watch it many times, and it's just garbage.
You just got to know people. I mean, I've got a Blu-ray release myself that was a fan remaster, and they've gotten into 780, which is pretty impressive.
Damn.
And again, it's a good series. It's worth having that in. I never do that unless a series is unavailable to be watched. But Freddy's Nightmares is more surreal than a lot of the other type of movies. But each of them, but unlike, say, the Friday the 13th series,
Freddy's actually there. Like
Freddy actually is involved. Yes.
I've tried to watch the series like 2 or 3 times, but the quality on the copies I have is just so bad. Like I can't get it. Can't get into it.
If I ever get a hold of the person I had, they only did a limited run of it. But if I ever find out like they're doing another one again, I'll have to let you know. But it's a rare thing.
Or maybe, well, we can probably figure something out.
There is a guy. He's in one of the groups. I think he's got Freddy's Nightmares for sale from time to time. Chad Ritchie.
We'll talk about it later.
Yep.
Because we are running pretty long. So anybody have any contributions? I think we're done with that. So
I think we should probably go.
Yep.
Yeah, we should move on.
So how the hell are we? A breakdown. So well, I guess to summarize, Nightmare on Elm Street is great. It's all great. Go see it, except maybe the reboot. Well, fuck it. See the reboot anyway. I like it.
Don't see that first.
Don't see it first. Like, no, but like, you know what? Watch them in order.
Rent it first.
1, 2.
Don't own
it. My Facebook friend Mark Patton was Jesse in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and he has like a thing coming out. Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. It's pretty great. Or at the very least, I enjoyed it.
Good deal.
Anyway, so who are we? So I'm Dustin. I'm a horror collector living here in Milwaukee. I am on Twitter as The Crypt of Horrors, which is also the name of my own YouTube channel where I try to show off my collection. So I've been doing unboxing videos and just pretty much just showing off whatever I find around town. I do the same on Instagram, also at The Crypt of Horrors. I used to be DHR Hunter, but branding, haha. So go subscribe to my stuff and follow me on Twitter, where I'm causing mayhem all day, most days. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off to whoever's ready to go as the host.
I will go ahead. Oh,
okay.
I can go ahead because I actually really need to go. I am Katie Cadaver. Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a body positive horror artist, alternative model, and makeup artist. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Just look up Cadaver with a K. I'm also a dead girl for Degger's Dark Coffin Classics horror TV show. You can find our page on Facebook and also find videos at vimeo.com/ddcc. And I'm the makeup artist for horror punk band Ratbat Spider. You can look them up at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. And I think their next show coming up is August. Oh boy. I'm a terrible promoter. August 17th. August 17th is the next show. So check them out. I forget where the show is. I'm horrible and not prepared. Sorry. But you can find all the details on Bandcamp and their Facebook page, and they are all over social media as well. Yeah, and I'm also a Trauma with Trauma Entertainment, so be sure to look up Trauma at trauma.com. And whoever else is ready can go ahead.
Well, I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. I run a YouTube channel that's dedicated to the enjoyment and preservation of physical media. And that could be things such as books or CDs or records. But also we tend to focus on the viewable media such as DVDs, Blu-rays, etc. We like to do things on the channel such as presenting what's coming out during the week. We do pickup videos, we do reviews, and of course, this weekend we are starting on our top 10 anime movies that we believe are our top 10 of all time. I will be the one leading off this Friday, but of course, next Friday we are going with Jacob's top 10. We are also about to hit our 100th episode, being on Monday. I'm hoping to actually even include, if I can get you all to contribute, a picture of everybody with their favorite physical media, just to also encourage people to come back here to Inside Movies Galore. I also do work with Inside Movies Galore. We have a few extra stuff on the Delusions of Grandeur page, where I have done a number of reviews on some short films that have been produced that have shown a recent release. I also help work with the schedule and trying to determine what movies go on those schedules as time goes by. Matter of fact,
we all appreciate you taking up the helm for that.
Well, no, it's always fun doing this type of work. And our next film for next Tuesday, which will be our end to the slasher summer, will be Scott Spiegel's Intruder, which of course has some amazing special effects, supposedly. I haven't seen it yet, so I will be looking at my Synapse copy this week to prepare. Of course, also in August, we have finally gotten the films that we are going to run through Anime August, which will be a silent voice, which reflects good because they were produced by Kyoto Anime, the studio that was set on fire, and one of the, unfortunately, the highest body counts that have happened murder-wise in Japan for a terrorist attack. 34 people lost their lives in that fire, which is a sad thing. So it's kind of good that we start off in August with a film that they produced. Also, big films such as Your Name, Summer Wars, and My Neighbor Totoro will round us out at the end of the month. So, of course, I hope you join us for next week and in August as we talk about the world of Japanese animation.
Cool. Jake, why don't you...
I could do that. My name's Jake. I frequently guest on Septum Sin versus the World, and as he said, we have some very fun stuff coming your way soon. Sorry. And I, of course, am also a big-time collector, interested in reviewing these kinds of things. I'm not very good at putting out reviews, but every now and then one of them will surface. Particularly, I do a line of Criterion reviews that I have several waiting in the wings. I also have my own YouTube channel, Kotobuki Jake, which is more dedicated to nature and the natural world when it gets updated, which I have to admit is infrequently. But hopefully with the upcoming vacation, I will hopefully find some time for some very fun videos to add to that. And I do have a even less frequently updated Hub Pages account, also Kotobuki Jake. And that'll do for me this go around.
Well, I think that you once you came on this show, you've enjoyed coming on Inside Movies Galore. So
yeah, yeah, that too.
In so saying, my name is David Stregi. I am one of your main hosts here on Inside Movies Galore, a founding father, so to speak. And I also do reviews on Delusions of Grandeur, which Septum Sim mentioned. And but I do a lot of interviews lately. So a lot of our interviews and some of our earlier episodes are out on Spotify. So check those out. We're 30 episodes deep out there, but we are more probably about 150 episodes here on YouTube. So definitely check out some of our other podcast discussions. And as far as movie producing, last week I just finished up producing on Deathboard. And this coming week, I'll be working with two different projects. One, I will just mention Dark 013, I think it's called. A film that Joe Sherlock has put together, an anthology of sorts. And a werewolf film that is also being produced by David Sterling. So I won't say too much on that. But that is what is in the works as I know it so far. So, in any case, like, share, and subscribe. Take a listen, everyone. Katie, if you wanted to go, you can.
All right. Good night, guys.
Yeah, I gotta go too. Good night.
Night, guys.
Good night.
And of course, enjoy the following week's film, which, as we said, was Intruders. So, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and tune in. We'll have some great stuff in store.